Cool. So I think we can start now. It's like to be mindful of everyone's time. Karthik and Sarojit, is that fine?
Yeah, sure, it is.
Cool. So welcome everyone to one more amazing edition of Talks. And so I'll quickly take a minute to talk about Bhartiyam as a platform and what the mission and goal of this platform is. So Bharatiam is basically like a socio-cultural platform for again like Indians in US, and we basically bring together like students, scholars, and industry professionals together and to build a form of community, um, um, uh, maintain that cultural intactness, and while doing that, help each other in basically go, like grow in the career and contribute to our country, which is India as well as US, while we are like living and flourishing here. So the goal of this particular event is to basically bring together people to basically share knowledge and communicate with each other. And what we believe is like knowledge is one of the most important tools, and we want to uh, bring this format where everyone can come and share their geekiness with each other and have discussions around that. Um, so yeah, this is like a very old thing which I keep sharing is basically there are things that we know, things that we don't know, and things that we don't know that we don't know. So the goal here is to basically expand on all those curves and learn more and grow. um, so with that, one important thing about this specific format is Geek Talks is designed to be more interactive, to be more, uh, sharing of each other's passion as opposed to having experts come in and talk. So, so the domain is not just limited to people who have been working in a particular domain or industry for a long time, but also to anyone who is interested in this in the topic and who would like who is passionate about it, and wants to come and discuss with this group. So we want to encourage more and more people to come up and share that with us. It could be ranging from like talking about anything around like uh, I don't know how baby carrots are made in industry to like basically constellations and creation of universe. Um, the goal is to basically again indulge in interesting conversations and form network and groups through that. With that, I would like to like quickly hand over to our presenters for today, which is Karthik and Sarad. And the topic of today on this day of Mahashivratri is Panchbhuta temples. And yeah, brief introduction about Karthik and Sarad is like Karthik works as I said, and he's joining Starbucks pretty soon, and moving to Seattle. His passion lies with Indian culture and history. He started learning Sanskrit recently and wants to grow and learn more about the culture and history that we come from. Um, in Sarat, he works as a product specialist. Sorry. Sarath works as a product specialist in a startup customer experience labs at Hyderabad, and is preparing for competitive exams. He also loves Indian art and culture, and in his free times reads a lot about history books, and is very passionate about Hindu iconography, which I think is a very interesting topic for some other geek talk. Uh, but yeah, with that, I would like to hand over to Sharath and Karthik. Um, yeah, and so feel free to post questions on the chat, and we will go ahead and ask the questions, towards the end. And or if you want to raise a hand, like do that. And if there's a point where we can, the presenters can ask a question, they'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, Namaskaram everyone, and thank you for joining. Happy Mahashivratri to everyone. First of all, me and Sharath would like to thank Akshay, Aman, and the folks of Bhartiyam for their wonderful platform and also providing us again with an opportunity to talk. Me and Sharath feel very humble today to have got this chance to talk about the five temples of Parmeshwar on a day that is considered very auspicious to him. Before we continue further, Sharath would now chip in for some time. Sharath?
Namaste, Namaskaram, Ellarkum Vanakkam, Samstakar, and hello everyone. Firstly, I want to thank Akshay ji and Aman ji, both of them, for giving us a chance to talk about the God on this very auspicious day. Me and Karthik sir, we both are very excited and thrilled at the same time. And now Karthik sir would continue further.
Thank you, Sharath. One disclaimer before we start, except the pics that we show as personally clicked, all others are from the internet. I think today being Mahashivratri, before going to the actual talk about the five temples, I can take the liberty of discussing about Mahashivratri, about what are the different stories associated with it. Actually, every month there's a Shivratri. It is supposed to be the day before the new moon or Amavasya. And it is supposed to be the darkest night of the month. Out of the 12 Shivratris, one has been accorded the greatest significance. Maha means great, and so hence it is called Great Shivratri. So what makes it so special? There are multiple stories associated with it. One is that on this day, Maheshwara and Parvati got married. So we are celebrating their marriage. And another story is that in the world of yogis, Shiva is considered as the Adi Yogi. As per the yogis, it is on the day of Mahashivratri that Shiva reached the pinnacle of the yoga or meditation. He became still like the Mount Kailasha. So that is why a lot of people worship whole night to Shiva and do the Jagran. Another story is Shiva is basically considered as a Nirakara. That means he does not have any form. But it is considered that on the day of Mahashivratri, he came as a form in the form of a Lingodbhava Murti. To celebrate that, also that he appeared in the midnight of Mahashivratri, people stay awake and worship Lord Shiva on that day. The other two stories that are very interesting are that it is said that Shiva saved earth, that is Bhuloka, on the day of Mahashivratri. First is during the episode of Sagar Manthan, and the other is during the descent of Ganga. It is said that when during the Sagar Manthan, when the Halahal Vish first came out, uh, everyone thought that the world will end because it was very strong. Then it was Shiva who came and drank the Halahal poison, but it was very strong. He did not take it completely in. He put it in his throat. So that is why, and his throat turned blue. That is why he's also called Neelkantha. Uh, Interesting story, interesting temple around the Sagar Manthan, that near Tirupati, around 70 to 80 kilometers, that is like 50 miles, there is a temple dedicated to Shiva. And it is the only Shiva temple in the world where instead of a Shivalinga, Shiva is in a lying pose uh, in the lap of Parvati. It is connected to the Sagar Manthan. It is said like after having drank the Halahal Vish, it was so powerful, and Shiva was walking back to Mount Kailasha. It was so powerful that Shiva felt a little dizzy, and he rested at that place. It is called Surutapalli, and the temple is called Palli Kondeshwara. If anyone is going near Tirupati, it would be a really good temple to explore. Uh, it does not have many visitors, and a very interesting story around it. So definitely one worth to check out. Another story regarding the descent of Ganga. It is said that After Bhagirath's intense tapasya, and he was granted the boon of taking the Ganga with him to the earth to save, to provide moksha to his ancestors. Ganga was coming from heaven with full force, which scared the Bhudevi. She thought Bhuloka will be destroyed. So she appealed to the Shiva to save the Bhuloka. It is said that Shiva then came and locked, and the Ganga fell into his matted locks, and he reduced the force of Ganga and he released it to go in smaller streams. And he saved the earth. So in these two ways, the Sagar Maha, drinking the halahal vish and uh, reducing the force of Ganga, Shiva saved the earth on the day of Mahashivratri. It has also been observed that the flowers blossom for the first day after the Mahashivratri. And there is also, it is said that winter ends from Mahashivratri. That is why, if you will ask any elders, even my mom tells me that story from the childhood, like from the day of Shivratri, winter will go away chanting Shiva, Shiva, Shiva. So it is said to mark the end of winter. Uh, well, that is for the Mahashivratri. Uh, this is how we have the talk is the agenda of the talk today. First, we'll be talking about the Panchakshari mantra. Then we will go into the different element temples. When we talk about the Panchabhuta, Panch means there are 5 elements which have considered very vital. There are Prithvi, Jal, Agni, air, and Akash. In Hindu pantheon, there are a lot of gods. Like there's Shiva, there's Vishnu, Brahma. Why exactly is Shiva? When we are talking about Panchabhuta temples, why are they all dedicated to Shiva? That might be a question that might be coming to your mind. Well, it is believed that Shiva is the one who laid down the laws on how the behavior of these elements, how these elements, like how water should behave. Everything has been defined by Shiva. So that is why Shiva is said is worshipped. All the elements are related with Shiva. Even in fact, there is one Kashi. There's a poem like Kashi Kalbhairavashtakam, where Shiva, which is dedicated to Shiva, and in that poem, uh, Shiva is addressed as Bhuta Sanganayaka. Well, there are a couple of meaning interpretations to it. One interpretation is that Shiva is the leader of the ghosts and goblins, and the other is that he is the leader of the 5 elements. So these are the 5 temples that we will be going over today. Ekambareshwara, that is at Kanchi. Jambukeshwar, that is Jalalinga, that is near Trichy. Agni, Arunachaleshwar, that is Tiruvannamalai. Vayu is at Sri Kalashti, Andhra Pradesh. And last is the Nataraj temple, which is the Akash element at Chidambra. So this is the Panchakshari mantra. This mantra was composed by Sri Adi Shankaracharya. I am playing this Panchakshari mantra in the background. This poem or mantra was Rutra, was composed by Sri Adi Shankaracharya. Well, what to say about a person who is even considered as an incarnation of the Shiva himself? I'm pretty sure that I can say with full confidence, without fear of sparking a debate, that Sri Adi Shankaracharya is the foremost of the philosophers to have been born in the Jambu Dvipa, in the land of Bharata. In the land of Bharata, it has witnessed a lot of intellectuals and philosophical giants, but Sri Adi Shankaracharya even towers compared to the other philosophers. There are around 14 works describing his life. And there is a huge debate on the exact year of his birth. Some say he was born as far back as around 300 BC, and some claim that he was born as early as 8th century AD. Though there is a debate on his date of birth, There's no debate on his place of birth and his age. He is said to have been born in Kerala in a small village called Kalladi, and he is said to have lived only till 32 years. There's an interesting story how he became a sannyasi. He had lost his father at a very young age and he wanted to take up sannyas. It is a custom that you need your parents' permission to take up sannyas. When he approached his mom to seek permission to take up sannyas, his mom refused. She said, like, I have already lost your father. I don't want to lose you. So there's no way I'm going to give you a permission to take up sannyas. But he realized his calling was only towards the sannyas. It is said that there was a miracle. At the age of 8, he was bathing in the river Kalladi. His mom was on the river bank, and while he was bathing, a crocodile comes and catches hold of his feet, and he starts dragging it, uh, Adi Shankaracharya, into the river. He calls out to his mom, like, "Mom, see, I'm gonna die. My last wish is to be die as a sannyasi. I don't want to be die as a normal grihastha, normal life. I want to die as a sannyasi." So his mom realizes, like, okay, fine, he's gonna die. So why not grant him his last wish? It is said that his mom at that moment says, "Okay, son, go ahead. You can go and take up sannyas." The legend goes that as soon as she uttered those words, the crocodile miraculously leaves the feet of Sri Adi Shankaracharya and disappears. And it is said that from that day onwards, a crocodile has not been spotted in that river again. And uh, uh, by the blessings of his, by permission of his mother, he takes up sannyas, and he is the one who is credited with reviving the Hinduism in India. He is the proponent of Advaita philosophy. He established mathas. He, at a very young age, he started writing. He wrote many commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, different books, Upanishads, and all. And he took a tour around the country. It is said that he travels the whole country like 4 times. He established mathas, which are the religious like centers, in where and they are on like each cardinal point of our country, like east, west, south, north, and each matha actually represents one Veda also. For example, the matha at east is Puri, and it represents the Rig Veda. In the south, it's the Shringeri Matha, and it is said to represent the Yajur Veda. In the west, it is the Dwarka Matha, and it is said to represent the Sam Veda. And in the north, it's the Badri, and it is said to represent the Atharva Veda. He appointed his 4 Shishyas as teachers, as the head of the Mathas. Of all that Shishyas, one interesting Shishya is the Totkacharya, who was appointed as the head of the North Matha, that is Badri. The interesting thing about Totkacharya is that his actual name was Giri, and he is said to be a very, you can say, a dumb person who could not grasp anything, but he was very devoted to his teacher. He was very hardworking, but he could not just learn anything. No matter how much efforts Sri Adi Shankaracharya did to make him learn, he just could not grasp anything. One day, he went out of the ashram to do some tasks. Some people say he went out to pluck flowers, or some say he went out to get the water. Sri Adi Shankaracharya is said to have waited for him without starting the lesson. At this time, one of his students commented that, "Why are you waiting for Giri? Teaching to him is like equivalent to teaching the wall. Uh, Both of them won't understand a thing. It's no use waiting for Giri. You can start the lesson." Sri Adi Shankaracharya did not say anything. He waited for Giri to come back. And as soon as Giri came back, it is said that Sri Adi Shankaracharya mentally transmitted all the knowledge to Giri. At that very moment, it is said that Giri extempore composed a poem praising Adi Shankaracharya, which is known as Totakastakam. Uh, Hence, he is also known as Totakacharya. And while I was talking, you might have heard in the background the ucharan of the mantra. And the person who sang, I guess, needs no introduction either. Uh, in fact, in 1948, a magazine, the Madras magazine, published a picture of her as a cover photo, and the magazine did not feel it important enough to write her name, because they thought like uh, it is she does not need any introduction. That was her popularity in 1948. Imagine at an age where there's no internet, there's no TV, but still she was so popular. In fact, the honorable first prime minister of India told about her, like when talking to her, like, who am I, a mere prime minister before a queen of music. And hers is also the voice that most of the people in the south wake up to, in the form of Venkatesha Suprabhatam. So now I think I will hand it over to Sharath, and we will start going into the Panchbhutalingas temples.
Hello there.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Sharath, over to you.
Sorry. So just to we have like a couple of questions, and I'll ask them like right now. One of them. So Nishant asks, does the Neelkantha temple in Rishikesh hold any significance with respect to Shiva drinking the wish?
That I'm not sure. Probably have to check.
Cool. And I think Nilab asked a question which Sharad answered, but I'll still say it. Like, so the question was, these temples also have any significance to 12 Jyotirlingas, or are they different?
They are different. These are not part of the 12 Jyotirlingas.
Okay.
Okay.
Go
Sharath.
ahead.
As Karthik sir has already discussed that we have five natural elements, and there are Panchabhuta Stalangal, means the five temples which represents the five elements. So we are going to now discuss about the uh, first Panchabhuta Stalangal, which is called as Bhulingam or else Prithvilingam. This temple is from uh, he's from Kanchipuram, and the main deity over there is Ekambareshwara. Is Ekambareshwara, and and Kanchipuram is also known as a temple city. There are over thousands and thousands of temples, and the main deity over there is Ekambareshwara, and his consort is known as Kamachi Devi Amma. She is no, and her site is one of the Sakti Stalam in Kanchipuram. The name Ekambareswara means that Eka means one, and Amba means mango. So this meaning literally translates to the one who is being devoted under a mango tree. And in the top right image, we can see that there is a mango tree. That is a temple tree which has its own significance, and we are going to discuss it further. And the legend says that one day at Mount Kailash, when Mahadev is in his devotion, Lord Parvati, in a joyful mood, tries to close both the eyes of Lord Shiva. We can see that sculpture in the bottom left image, and sun being one eye of Lord Shiva, and moon being the another eye of Lord Shiva. When both of his eyes get closed, the entire universe gets dark. So after knowing her mistake, she goes to Mahadev and asks for her forgiveness. To which Mahadev says that Papa Vimochanam should be done, and she has to take a rebirth, which is an to make her own penance under this 3,500-year-old mango tree in the top right corner. This mango tree has four different branches, and it bears four different fruits which have four different flavors. We are currently calling it as a tissue culture, but in those days we have such tree, and this fruit is only used for the temple purposes, and it is not used for the public and private usage. And seeing her devotion, the Lord tries to test her devotion by sending fire onto her. On the bottom right image, we can see that Kamachi Devi is holding the Sivalingam. He is praying to Lord Shiva. When Lord Shiva tries to send fire onto her, Kamachi Devi requests her brother Lord Vishnu. Then Lord Vishnu takes the crescent on the head of the Lord Shiva and adjusts the moon in a direction so that the moon rays get directly onto that area and that the entire region gets cooled off. She again starts the prayer. Seeing that again, Lord Mahadev then sends Ganga from his head. Ganga, as she being her sister.
Sir, your voice is making in between.
Okay, then Goddess Ganga will pass beside from her, and that's the second way how she gets saved from the test which was sent by Lord Shiva. And then she started to make a lingam from her own hand using the clay and sand. That is how this Bhulingam and Prithvi Lingam got emerged. And this is the exact place where she was given the forgiveness, and she has attained moksha. And this place is called as Moksha Sthala, and any devotee who goes there and asks for forgiveness would be granted, and that is the specialty of this temple. And one more interesting fact is that in this particular temple, the abhishekam to the main deity isn't done. The reason behind this is as the lingam is made of clay and sand, the abhishekam won't be taking place, and hence they will only apply oil to the main deity. And this place is also called as Harihara Sthala. We know that Hari is Vishnu and Hara is Lord Shiva, and there are 108 Divya Desam Stalangal representing Lord Vishnu. Divya means divine, and Stalam means place. So there are 108 divine places of Lord Vishnu, which are mentioned by the Alvar saints in the Vaishnavism. And there are 275 Padal places Stalangal, which means holy sites of Lord Shiva, which were mentioned in the Tevaram poems by the Nayanar side. So this Ekambareshwar temple holds the sanctum of Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu at the same place. Hence, it is called as the Harihara Kshetra. And there are some interesting facts about this temple town, Kanchipuram as well. We all know about the great poet Kalidasa. He mentions in a poem that Pushpeshu Jati, Purusheshu Vishnu, Narishu Ramba, and Nagareshu Kanchi, which translates that if we are talking about flowers, the beautiful flower would be the Malli, the Jati Malli, or else the jasmine flower for its fragrance and all. And if we are talking about the men, the beautiful men born ever was Lord Vishnu. And if we talk about woman, the beautiful woman would be the Ramba, who is a celestial being. And if we talk about the beautiful city, it is Kanchipuram. And a known and a well-known Chinese traveler, Ian Sang, in his book CUK, has mentioned that Kanchipuram is one of the most fertile lands in India, which was inhabited by some honest, self-esteemed, and courageous people. He's mentioning the Pallavas over here, who used to rule this place, and the founder of Zen Buddhism, Bodhidharma, was also a Pallava prince. He has moved to China for his teachings, and we can see about his legend in the movie Seventh Sense, which was played by actor Surya. And there are 7 Mukti sites in total in India, and they are Ayodhya, Madura, Maya, Kashi, Kanchi, Avantika, Puri, Dwaravati, Saptaite, Mokshadayaka. Means there are 7 places. If one reaches any of the 7 sites, they'll attain Mukti. And Kanchipuram is the only place from the South India which acts as a Mukti center. And there are some interesting architectural facts about this temple. This temple has the 1000 pillar mandapam. In Tamil it is called as the Ayiram Kal Mandapam, and there are 1008 sivalingams in the inner wall of the temple, and there are 10 musical pillars in the inner sanctum. And on the bottom right image we can see that Parvatama is holding the sivalingam. While holding the sivalingam to the actual image, to the actual lingam in the main temple, her her bangle prints got a mark on the lingam, and it is still visible and it is still seen. So whenever you go to Kanchipuram, please visit all these places as mentioned by me, and we shall go to the next slide and discuss about the next slide. So the second sthalam is the Jalalingam, and the element over here is water. And this temple is called as Jambukeshwara temple. He is also called as Tiruvainai Koyal in Tiruchirappalli district of Tamil Nadu. This temple is in Srirangam Island. We can see it in the second image, where some tall gopurams are visible. The tall gopuram on the left hand was from Sri Ranganatha Koyal in Srirangam. It is one of the largest temple in India. And the gopuram on the right hand is from Jambukeshwara. So Jambu in Tamil means blackberry, and Ishvara means Ishvara. So this name translates to the Ishvara who is being prayed in the blackberry forest. Once this place, the entire region of Srirangam has the blackberry plantation. So that is how the name has came up. And the legend about this temple is it is very similar to the earlier temple, except for the fact when Lord Shiva is in his meditation, Goddess Parvati mocks him up, to which he condemns her act and directs her to go to earth and pray to him and devote her. So she takes up the incarnation as Akhilandeshwari Devi Amman, and she chooses this place Jambu forest, and she started making a lingam from the river of Kaveri. We can see that this Srirangam island is a riverine island. It is covered entirely by Vaigai river. Vaigai is a tributary of Kaveri. So she takes up the water from Kaveri river, and she makes up a lingam from water, and she used to pray to that lingam. So seeing her devotion, Lord Shiva gives her a darshan, and he gives her upadesam. So this is the site where Lord Shiva is treated as a teacher. Jambukeshwara is a teacher, and Akhilandeshwari Devi Amma is a student of him. And there's another legend as well, which is linked to this story. And there are two Sivaganas, the two followers of Shiva, namely Pushpadanta and Malyavan. And these both used to pick up fights every day, and they both used to have a serious quarrel among themselves. So one day they both cursed each themselves, and Malyavan became a spider, and Pushpadanta became an elephant. So these both spider and elephant, they go to Jambukeshwara, and they used to pray to Lord Shiva. This spider Malyavan used to make a spider web on top of the Shivalingam, so that it prevents from any dry leaves that gets onto the Shivalingam, and it also protects from the sun rays as well. And this elephant, the Pushpadanta, used to carry water from his trunk from the Kaveri river, and he used to do abhishekam on the top of the lingam. Daily, the spider used to build a spider's web, and the elephant used to do abhishekam. One day, seeing this poor elephant doesn't know that Malyavan is making spider's web on it. He used to think that it is a dust particle, so he used to do abhishekam on it. Seeing that it made the spider Malyavan very furious. So Malyavan gets into Pushpadanta's trunk, and he bites him off, and the poison kills himself and both the elephant as well. Seeing their devotion, Lord Shiva comes up before them and grants salvation to Pushpadanta the elephant. but Malivan committing a killing, he has a sin and he has to take another birth. And in his afterlife, he becomes a Chola king called as Kochanga Chola. Kochanga means the red-eyed Chola. He used to have some big red eyes, so that is how he has that name. And he has built a couple of temples. He nearly built 70 temples with narrow passages. The reason why he built all the temples with narrow passages is that he's afraid that in that life the elephant might again show up and he might enter into the temple. That's the reason why he used to have very small passages to the temple. Even in this temple, Jambukeshwaram, we can see that the entrance is only 4 feet height and it is 2.5 feet in wide. So people who are tall, it is very difficult for them to get inside the temple. And there is also another legend relating to this temple that a sage with the name Jambu has once he went to Mount Kailash on request of Lord Shiva. There he saw Lord Shiva eating a divine fruit. So after eating the fruit, Mahadev spat the seeds on a side, and thinking that seeds might give him wisdom, this sage Jambu has took the seeds and he tried to eat it. And on the bottom right image, we can see a tree coming out of a person. This is sage Jambu. After consuming the seeds, a tree started growing out of himself. And this culture on the bottom right image gives us a clear indication of all three legends together. We can see that there's an elephant on the left side on the left side, and we can see a spider, and we can see Akilandeshwari Amman devoting to Lord Shiva, and we can see the sage Jambu onto which a tree started growing. And below the lingam, we see 9 blocks. And the significance of the 9 blocks over here is that there are 9 passages to the human body. So all the 9 passages of the human body is represented in the 9 blocks. This 9 blocks is exactly covered on the frontal side of the Garbhagriha. So people who are tall enough can't get into the temple can use this 9 blocks as a from which they can see the inner lingam from outside. So that is also the reason why they kept these 9 blocks. And we can see that there's a natural spring, natural water coming beneath the lingam. And till now, no one doesn't know what's the reason and how the water is coming beneath the lingam. And this is the significance of the Jalalingam. And the important fact about the architecture of this temple is that this temple also holds a thousand pillared mandapa, and every pillar has a special sculpture, and every sculpture has its own story. And people who are interested in the iconography and who are interested in the carvings would be an eyepiece for them for visiting this temple. And another fact about this temple is around the noon time, the head priest of the Akilandeshwari Amman Koil wears a sari, puts a crown on his head, and then he offers his prayer to the lingam inside her chamber. And this is an ancient ritual which is being performed from those days. It is performed in such a way that goddess Parvati Devi has devoted to Lord Shiva. And we shall move to the next slide and discussing the third slide. The third Salangal represents the Agni. Here the main deity is called as Arunachaleshwarar. Here Iswara is in the form of Gnanagni. Gnanagni means knowledge in the form of a unlimited beam of unlimited column of fire. And it is also the exact place where the Lingodbhava has happened. And the legend about this temple is that once Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma has a controversy between themselves as who would be the greatest among them. So Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma both goes to Lord Shiva for his judgment, to which Lord Shiva turns into a column of fire, asking them both that whoever might see the crown of his top end and feet of his lower end to the beam of fire would be called as the greatest. So hearing this, on the bottom right image, we can see the carving from a Chola temple in Tarasuram. We can see that Lord Vishnu takes in the form of a boar, Varaha Avatara, and he started digging into the earth for seeing the bottom end. And Lord Brahma taking the form of swan, and he starts going around the sky for seeing the topmost part of the beam of the fire. So after having a journey till some extent, Lord Vishnu accepted his defeat and he withdrew from the brawl. While Lord Brahma was going towards the top, he saw a Talambu flower, a Mogali Puvu in Telugu, and a screw pine flower in English, that is being fall from the head of the Lord Shiva. So Brahma has a conversation with the flower, and he asked the flower for the remaining distance for reaching the topmost part of the crown. So the flower says that I have been having this journey since 40,000 years. So hearing that, Brahma thinks that he may be unable to reach the topmost end of the fire. So he requests the flower for a false witness. So learning this, Lord Shiva curses Brahma that there wouldn't be any temple for him on the earth, and he also curses the Talambu flower, the spruce pine flower, that this flower won't be used for any religious purposes. And this Tiruvannamalai is the exact place where Shiva turned into a column of fire and eliminated the ego. And we on the top right corner, on the top right image, we can see that there's a hill beneath the Gopurams. That hill is called as Tiruvannamalai. Malai in Tamil means a hill, and Tiru means Sri. It's a very divine word. This Tiruvannamalai in Kreta Yugam was made of fire, and in Treta Yugam the holy mountain was made of emerald, and in Dwapar Yugam this holy mountain was made of gold. In Kali Yugam it is made of rock. And on request of both Vishnu and Brahma, Lord Shiva, in this form of column of fire, transforms himself into a lingam at the foothills of this holy mountain. So there are some. So most of the religious activities are being done in this place, and this Tiruvannamalai is considered as a capital of Saivism cult, and we can see many siddhas over there. Many siddhas which has a lineage of over thousands of years stay over there and reside over there. And there is also a saying that we can attain mukti by doing all these four things. That's Darshanath Abrasadasi, Jananath Kamalaliye, Kasi Yantu Maranam Mukti, Maranath Arunachalam. It says that one can attain mukti if one had darshanam at Chidambaram Natarajarar Koil, and one can also attain mukti if he is born at Tiruvarur in Tamil Nadu, and one can also attain mukti if he dies in Kashi, and the last and easiest way to attain mukti is wherever you are, you thinking of this Arunachala would give you mukti. So that's how important religious center this Tiruvannamalai is. And there's also a Girivalvam or Giri Pradakshina, which is a circumambulation around this holy mountain. It is a 14-kilometer long walkaway. Generally, people do it in all days and all times, but the most special and auspicious day would be on a Paurnami or a full moon day. If we do circumambulation, it is going to give us good health and all. And there are eight Ashtadikpalakas. There are eight Dikpalakas in all the eight directions, from north, northeast, east, southeast, and south, in all directions. So in all the eight directions of this holy mountains, eight special lingams are placed. We need to start the circumambulation from Yamalingam, and then we need to move in the southwest direction. Southwest direction is for Nairuti. Then we see Nairuti Lingam, and on the west side we see Varna. It is for God Varna. So every lingam on the way of circumambulation has its own significance, and there are people with bone deformities and bone dysfunctions were be have treated well when they have had a darshan at this Yamalingam, and people have and it is also said that people has also got the concentration, and whenever they try to start off a thing, they go to this Nairutilingam and think of a good thing, and it will definitely happen. So every all these eight directions have eight different temples, and with eight different significances. And circumambulation doesn't mean that we just walk away on the 14 kilometers, but we need to stay. We need to stop at each and every temple, sit for a while, and think of the god, and that's how the circumambulation needs to be done. And as I have mentioned, Tiruvannamalai is a home to so many siddhas. Example, we can talk about Bhagavan Ravana Maharshi, who is born with the name Venkatraman Iyer. He has set up an ashram on the foothill of the mountain, and he used to give upadeshams to all his students. And we also have Seshadri Swami, who is also a great siddha. He is born in Kanchipuram, and then in his afterlife, he has moved to Tiruvannamalai. He is nicknamed as the saint with the golden hand. And and there's also a Kavikanta Ganapati Muni as well. He's a Sanskrit scholar, and he's a follower of Ramana Maharshi. So many people were born in Tiruvannamalai. So many great people have born in Tiruvannamalai, stayed in Tiruvannamalai, and rested in Tiruvannamalai. So and in Skanda Purana, it is also written that there is a thin line differentiating a human life from before this from a life from before visiting Tiruvannamalai and after visiting Tiruvannamalai. So it is a very major religious Hindu site. So I would request all of you to visit this temple, and over to Karthik.
Thanks, Sharad. And by the way, this is also a pretty huge temple. It's like spread over 24 acres. And when I visited this temple, it felt very peaceful. Uh, well, going over to the next is the Vayu Lingam. This Vayu Kshetra is at Sri Kalhasti, which is around 35 kilometers away from Tirupati. This temple is also regarded as the Rahu Ketu Kshetra or Dakshina Kailasham. It is said that the inner temple was constructed around 5th century and the outer temple was constructed around 11th century by the Rajendra Chola I. And later on, different Cholas and Vijayanagara kings kept on adding to the structure. Uh, Even there's a mandapa inside the temple which was constructed by Sri Krishna Dev Raya of Talwa dynasty of Vijayanagara Empire. Why is this temple associated with Vayu? The answer is that the legend goes at the beginning of the creation, Vayu did a tapasya, the Vayu god, to Shiva. Previously, this lingam, that place, had what is known as a Karpura lingam. He did a tapasya for many thousands of years. Shiva was very pleased. He appeared before Vayu and he said, like, Vayu you're a very dynamic person. You cannot stay still at one spot. But still, you did penance for like tapasya for thousands of years without moving. So Shiva grants him three boons. So Vayu says the first boon should be that I should be present everywhere. The second boon is that I should be the part of every living being. If living being does not have me, they should die. And the third is he says like I worship this Karpura Lingam for so many years. I want this lingam to be henceforth known as Vayu Lingam. Shiva grants him those three boons. That is why it is said like we may survive for a few days without water, food, without sleep for a few days, but without air we would not survive even go beyond minutes. As the Rahu Ketu Kshetra, this is the place where a lot of people go to do the Rahu Dosha Puja. If people an astrologer say like, okay, you are having the Rahu Dosha or Ketu something, they go to that puja, or go to that temple to get that puja done. Interestingly, this is the only temple, uh, rather the Hindu temple that is open on the day of an eclipse. The rest of all the temples they close down due to eclipse. It is said to be dosha time, but due to the Ketu, it being a Rahu Ketu Kshetra, this temple is always open. Like when Sharat was talking about the Jalalingam, he said like there's a water column behind the under the Shivalinga, and even in the Arunachaleshwara, since it is the fire lingam, no person can stay beyond a few minutes in the Garbhagriha because it becomes so hot in there. Now, Sri Kalashti being a Vayu lingam, it it is said that there's always a column of fire near the Shivalinga. So next time if you all visit the Shivalingam, like Sri Kalashti, try to focus on the Deepam within the Garbhagriha. You will see it is continuously flickering because there is a column of fire always going around the Garbhagriha, even though there is no opening inside the Garbhagriha. Uh, and also, it borrows some of the legend from the Jambukeshwara, the elephant and the spider. In fact, the word Shri Kala Hasti means Shri means spider, Kala means snake, and Hasti means elephant. So this temple also kind of borrows the legend of the elephant, the spider, and it also adds one more animal to it of snake. One of the most famous legends you can find across in this temple, associated with this temple, is that of the Bhakt Kannappa. It is said that Bhakt Kannappa was a hunter. Uh, and he was a very big devotee of Shiva. Since he was a hunter and he used to hunt animals, he used to uh, give offerings to Shiva his hunt of dead animals. The pandits of the temple used to be furious. Like when they used to come in the morning and they used to see like someone has offered dead animals, they used to think like, who is this person who is doing this activity? But he was doing out of pure devotion because that was as a hunter. That was whatever he was getting, he was sharing it with Shiva. Uh, but the pandits, everyone used to curse him. Like, who is that person who is maligning this temple, defiling this temple? So Shiva decided to test the devotion of Kannappa. It is said that when Kannappa once goes to the temple to offer his hunt as the offerings, he sees that one of the eye of that Shivalinga was bleeding. So what he does is he plucks out his eye and puts it on the bleeding eye, and the bleeding stops, and he becomes very happy that he offered his own eye and Shiva's eye stopped bleeding. After some time, he sees that the other eye starts bleeding. So he decides to pluck his other eye and offer it as well to the Shivlinga, to Shiva. But if he plucks his another eye, he would not be able to know where the eye is of the Shiva. So it is said that he places his foot on Shivalinga near the eye, marks it, and he plucks out his another eye and offers it to Shiva. Shiva was so pleased with his devotion and sacrifice. It is said that Shiva appeared to him and gave him moksha. Also, like other temples, like Sarat said, Jambukeshwar, it has like 1,000 Shivlingas. Even this temple has like over 1,000 Shivlingas of various sizes. One of the most interesting Shivlinga is the Spatikalinga that is made out of glass. And if you ever go to that Sri Kalashti, go around that temple complex and you will find the glass, a Shivlinga made out of glass. And there's a Deepam, a lamp lighted always, behind the uh, Shivlinga. So you can see that flame through this Shivlinga. That it's a really beautiful sight. Another interesting thing to watch out for if you are visiting Sri Kalashti is a temple dedicated to Ganesha, which is known as Patal Ganesha. It is said that the Ganesha temple, since why Patal Ganesha? Patal means netherworld, that is underground. So that Ganesha idol is maybe around 15 to 20 feet under the ground. So there's a very small opening, maybe 3 feet by 3 feet. One has to crawl, get inside, and walk through the stairs to reach to the Ganesha idol. It's a very small place, and at one time, only around 10 people are allowed. Once that batch of 10 comes out, another batch of 10 are sent to that one. It is definitely one place that one should visit. It's very beautiful. It is next to a river called Swarnmukhi. One of the Gopuram actually goes to the river Swarnmukhi. Unfortunately, the river is pretty dry now. Uh, as you can see in this image, uh, the river is there. It's kind of, it's almost dry. But if the river is full, it presents a really beautiful view. And moving on to the next lingam, that the final bhuta, final element, the Akash. Uh, and by the way we structured our talk, like we put all the temples in a particular order. Uh, the Nama Shivaya, all the syllables of that Namasmarana is said to represent a particular element. It is in that particular order we place these temples, and we have been presenting our talk. The final element temple is the Akash temple, which is the Nataraj temple at Chidambaram, Tamil Nadu.
Hey Karthik, sorry to interrupt. This is Harita. Could you please talk about the order again? Sorry, I didn't get that exactly.
Okay, even in the Panchakshari mantra, like Na Ma Shivaya, we all say Namah Shivaya. That is how we take the Namasmarana of Shiva. In that, it is said that the syllable of Na represents Bhulangam, like earth element. Ma represents element of water. Shi represents fire. Va represents Vayu, and Ya represents Akash. So it is in that order. Prithvi, Jal, Agni, Vayu, and Akash.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So going to that last temple, this temple of Chidambaram, it's in Tamil Nadu. It is also a pretty ancient temple town. In fact, has its references even in the Tamil Sangam literature. The current structure that we see today was constructed by the early Cholas. This temple has a lot of halls, which are known as sabhas. Major lot of sabhas, important sabhas, were said to be constructed by a king called Parantaka I in around 907 AD, who constructed all these sabhas. Uh, the Parantaka I belonged to the Chola family. Chidambaram Nataraja is actually the family deity of the Cholas. This temple is spread over around 40 acres, and it is also said to be one of the oldest surviving temple structure. This temple also very unique because in this temple there is no Shivalinga. Like the main presiding deity is not a Shivalinga. It is the dancing Nataraja. Nata means dance and Raja means king. So here the legend is associated with dance. So the legend has it that previously this whole area was full of forest, and lot of rishis had ashrams there. When rishis were doing the tapasya, to see their devotion of their austerities, it is said that Shiva and Vishnu came in the form of Mohini and they did a dance. Upon seeing the dance, all the rishis started chase Mohini, and all the wives of the rishis started chasing Shiva. Uh, and then Shiva and Vishnu both disappeared. After that, the rishis realized how hollow their devotion was. It is said that when Rishi Patanjali and there was another Rishi who was known as Vyagrapada, they came to know about this, that Shiva came here and did a divine dance. It is said that both of these sages came to this forest, constructed a shivling, and they started praying to the god Shiva. They did a tapasya, and Shiva was so pleased. He appeared in front of those rishis, and it is said that he did the Tandava dance there. Like I mentioned, like in the Chidambaram, one of the most beautiful things to watch out for are the different sabhas or the halls. Some of the famous halls are the Nritya Sabha, which has around 50 pillars, but it is said to have originally around 56, and 6 got broken. All the 50 pillars are beautifully carved with images of dancers and musicians. The legend has it that Nritya Sabha is actually the place where God Shiva and Goddess Kali had a duel of dance. It is said that God Shiva defeated Goddess Kali by doing a pose which is known as Urdhava Tandava pose. There are some images, sculptures available in the market if you all are interested. Like you all might have seen a Nataraja image in this pose, which is in the bottom right. But in the Urdhava Tandava pose is where Shiva lifts his leg in such a way that it exposes his genitals. So goddess Kali, being a woman, she refuses to do that pose and she accepts the defeat. She is defeated not because she cannot perform that one, because she would not do that dance. So uh, that is one famous hall. The other famous hall is the Raj Sabha, which has around 1,000 pillars, which are put in a very perfect symmetry. It is said that that is the place where a lot of pilgrims used to come and stay, and it with an easy access to the pond. Uh, it is said that in Tamil Nadu, there used to be called 63 saints, Nayanars. It is said that this temple used to have all the works of the Nayanars. Uh, Once, when the Rajaraja Chola I heard one of the poems of this, one story is that he heard one of the poets his recite one of the poem of one of the 63 Nayanars. He wanted to read all of them. And the other says that Shiva appeared in his dream and asked him to go and revive the steps. It is said that he went to the temple, Chidambaram temple, and he asked all the pandits to open the room so that he can get access to all the scripts. It is said that all the Purohits refused access to the king. They said that the only way one can access a room which had all the scripts was if all the 63 Nayanars come to that temple, and they give orders to open the door of the room which houses all the scripts. So it is said that the Rajaraja Chola I made sculptures of all the 63 Nayanars, consecrated them, and took all the statues to the temple, and he asked them to open the door of the room which housed all the scripts. It is said that when it was open, most of the Rajaraja Chola I found that most of the scripts had already been eaten by the white ants. He was able to save some of the scripts. If anyone is, in fact, recently, our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji even was referencing about some Tamil literature, Sangam literature, in his visit to Tamil Nadu. Had Rajaraja Chola I not taken that step, we would have lost a treasure trove of knowledge. And the most interesting sabha uh, of Chidambaram, or the hall, is what is known as the Chit Sabha, or the hall of consciousness. That is where it is say with Chidambaram there is something called Chidambaram Rahasya is associated. That is a secret of Chidambaram. Uh, that it is said that the Chit Sabha holds that Rahasya. Like in all the previous temples, all the elements, every element has its presence in its own temple. Like Vayu temple, a column of air. In the Jalalingam, there was water was always there. Like Akash is what? Akash is nothing. It's space. It permeates everything. So in that same way, in that Chit Sabha, there's a small 3.5 meter by 1.5 meter small room covered by a cloth. And if you open that cloth, there is nothing. So it kind of shows that Shiva permits everything. So this uh, is actually said to be the Chidambaram Rahasya. Uh, and this a lot of people would try to understand like what is that rahasya. Like a lot of people still say like it has not been decoded. Some still say like there is something else waiting out to be discovered. But it's like the akasha is everywhere, so Shiva is everywhere, so that small place has nothing. And this kind of ends our visit to the all five temples. Right now, we would like to show some of the pictures that Sharath clicked when he visited. This is from Jambukeshwar temple. By the way, Sharath has visited all the five Panchbhuta temples. I have visited only three. There are two still for me to visit. Thanks, everyone. Sharath, you want to go over all this one?
Yeah, I'll give a quick brief on the images. And on the bottom right corner, we can see that the elephant, spider, Parvatama, and say Jambu on one side. And on the top left corner, actually these four pillars are on the center. There is a Dvajastambham. We can see the Dvajastambham on the bottom right corner. So all these four pillars are so humongous pillars in the main chamber. And the top left pillar shows that Lord Shiva on left side and Goddess Parvati on right side. This image shows that there's a slight gap between both of them. It also means that they are recently wedded. I mean, the marriage happened very nearer, so that's why there's a distance between them. And on the top right corner, we can see another image on which they both themselves mounted on Nandi, which is the Rishavahana. So these both Shiva and Parvati got into an intimacy in the top right image. And on the bottom left image, we can see that the Skanda, Kumara, and Lord Murugan was born, and he stands between both his father and his mother. So these may look like a normal pillars to us, but if we go into depth, we can see that there's a human form, human life that we can observe from each and every pillar. I personally think that this is what our ancestors has left to us. So there's so much thing for us to decode. So whenever visit temple, please look at the sculptures, try to decode it, and if possible, try to interact with the locals. That's where you get the most and useful information. That's how me and Karthik sir, we both go to the temple and get additional information. So I think that's it for the start, and I hope me and Karthik sir we did good. And you can see all these pictures are from the same temple. And now Karthik sir will proceed.
By the way, like we would like to end our talk with a small this thing to Shiva shloka. It just said like Jagataha Pitrau Vande Parvati Parmeshwarau. It has been taken from the works of Kalidasa. It is the first shloka of Kalidasa's work Raghuvamsha. It says like I pray to Shiva and Parvati, the parents of universe. On that auspicious day of Mahashivratri, we all pray to Shiva and Parvati, and thank you everyone for joining and listening. Thank you. Namaste.
I have a question to just wrap up that, like, it might be a stupid question, but all these temples are around like Tamil Nadu. Four are in Tamil Nadu and one in Andhra Pradesh.
Yes, exactly. True.
How is that? Like, is there any, like,
Uh, that's something that has been there, but I don't know why they're in that geographical location. The legends are associated. But like you rightly said, like the 12 Jyotirlingas, they're spread across all the length and breadth of our country. But these five temples are located in that small region only.
And one more fact is that from these 12 Jyotirlingas, only two are from South India, and the rest of the all the 10 temples are from North India. We have Panchdam in the Kedarnath area around the Uttarakhand in the North India. So there's nothing that North India got temples and South India got temples. Every temple has its own significance, and every temple has its own story and history. And that's thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hi, this is Harita. Sorry to interrupt. I have one question, and I want to thank first for Karthik and everyone so for this session. Since this being my first time knowing about all these temples and and the terminology, it's kind of new. So is there a group that you all are in where you have all this kind of list, so that in future if I have to, when I visit India, I know that I'll make sure that I visit at least some of them, because it's hard to kind of remember these names as days, right? Is there any group that you all maintain where you discuss?
But I think Aman and Akshay, they are the ones who run this
Yeah,
party.
so
Uh,
so you can definitely sign up on our Bhartiyam page, and what we'll do is pretty soon we are working on creating like a kind of a blog out of this list and put it on the Bhartiyam website. So this information we'll try to post there, and also like if not, you can definitely I can message you the details. You can reach out to me, and I can connect you to Karthik and Sharath for specific details.
Sure, thank you.
And so yeah, so thank you everyone. This was basically our first talk of our Seattle chapter, and yeah, and so yeah, for in the coming weeks we'll have more such sessions, and you can sign up on the on the chat. We basically share this link, which is basically only admins post to it. It's no spam. So all the talks that we get, like maybe a couple of times a week, a month, we post updates on that. So sign up on those groups, which is on WhatsApp, Signal, or any other platform. And yeah, uh, uh, hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.